Weencast, a Ween podcast with Shane and Rory.
Hey, what's up? This is Shane.
And this is Rory.
And this is Weencast. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. How's it going?
Yeah, welcome to a new episode.
Yeah, so welcome back, everybody. It's been a little longer than normal. We took a bit of a break for the holidays and the new year, but we're happy to be back. It was a busy fall for us, all you listeners. We were honored to interview the likes of Tomato 11, Reverend B. Ill from The Sound of Urchin, a couple awesome episodes. Check out if you haven't listened to them yet. We also got to be on the show Earfloss, a music history podcast. Had an awesome conversation about Ween with its awesome host, Kenny. That was a fantastic evening. We spoke for hours. Check out Earfloss. It was an awesome time getting to chat it up about Ween with Kenny. And of course, I would be remiss to mention the Philly Met show in December. It was an awesome fall. Awesome Philly Met show. But it was nice to take a few weeks to relax. We're happy to be back. Happy New Year. Belated New Year, everybody. Welcome back.
Yeah, man. If you heard any of our episodes from late last year, we were talking a lot about the amazing Sound of Urchin swag that we were gifted by Chris Tomato from Sound of Urchin after our amazing interview with him. He was so cool enough to send us some digital download cards for the re-release albums of Rejoice and Black Castle. So we still have some of those available. We want to thank some of our podcast friends, Joe, Jordan, and Troy.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for me too.
Thank you so much, guys. Just to let everyone know, so basically we are at about halfway in terms of our hosting costs paid for the whole year. So
that is so awesome.
Yeah, that's all we're trying to do, is just trying to make a few bucks to put into the show just to pay for the costs of the podcast. So it's kind of a win-win. You get some awesome Urchin downloads, absolutely amazing music. If you haven't checked out Urchin, it's you're not going to be disappointed, and you help us out a little bit. And again, we want to thank Tomato for hooking us up. If you're interested, you can just email us, weencastpodcast@gmail.com, or if you just want to throw us a buck or two, if you don't mind, hit us up on Patreon. It's patreon.com/weencastpodcast. So
yeah,
if you want to help out the show, hook us up.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It's so cool. It's kind of crazy that I still think it's crazy that people listen to me fucking talk about Ween. So it still doesn't get old to have people, give let us know that we're doing a good job or enjoying it or whatever. And thanks for the donations and the swag to get the swag, and that's so cool. I never would imagine that someone would actually pitch in to help me pay for this shit. So thank you so much, guys.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hey, this is Kenny with Earfloss, a music history podcast. Earfloss is a bi-weekly music history podcast where each episode, me and a co-host, usually Natalia, take an in-depth look at a different band or musician from all genres and all times. We go into their life, their career, their history, and we talk about their music. You can find Earfloss on Castbox at castbox.fm or wherever you listen to podcasts. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. Check it out. Earfloss, a music history podcast.
I'm Brian Colburn.
And I'm Jay Sweet.
And we're the co-hosts of Tune Styles, a podcast aimed at the music nerd in us all.
Each listener interactive episode hones in on a different musical topic or artist,
featuring guest interviews, listener polls, and roundtable discussions about the music that shaped the soundtrack to our lives.
You can find us at tunestylespodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever your favorite podcasts are found.
Subscribe to Tune Styles and be a part of our weekly musical conversation.
Stay tuned.
Okay, and so this will be our 20th episode. So happy 20 episodes to you, Rory.
Yeah, dude. Happy 20th episode to you. I can't believe we got to 20, man. Time flies.
Yeah, so it's our first show of 2020, and this will be 20 years since the show that we're about to talk about,
Yeah,
which is May 20.
This spring is the 20th anniversary of this show.
Yes, so it's May 20th, May 27th, 2000, at the Electric Factory in Philadelphia, and there are 20 shows on that tour. So that is actually the 20th show of the White Pepper tour.
There's 20 shows on the tour. It's the 20th show of the tour, episode 20, the year 2020, 20th anniversary of that tour. It's a lot of fucking 20s.
So before we get to that show, we just wanted to do a shout out real quick. We had talked about on our last episode, which was back to the end of last year at the Met in Philadelphia, we had mentioned that we had talked to a dude in the Prohibition Bar about the podcast, and he was really nice to us and everything. And we just wanted to mention we've since found out his name is Dan, so he hit us up.
Yeah, Dan, it was awesome to briefly meet you at Prohibition Bar, and I'm glad you're a listener, and thanks for catching up, dropping us a line, man, and checking out the Philly Met Show episode. Hopefully you're listening tonight. Awesome. Appreciate you listening, and rock on.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Okay, so this is the second show at the Electric Factory in Philly. The first show was in '99, and it was actually less than a year before this show that we're about to talk about in 2000. So it's kind of tough because those two shows have always sort of like blended together, I think, in both of our memories.
Yeah, wasn't that August of '99? Was that August?
It was the end of the summer in '99. So it's not even.
So
it's like
that's not even a year.
Back. Yeah, they're back again for the spring of 2000, basically.
Yeah. So the Electric Factory is a great Philly venue. A lot of water under the bridge. And yeah, dude, it's like two shows at the same venue in less than a year. First off, that's a little bit not unprecedented, but that's kind of unusual in a way, you know? Like, I'm trying to figure out any other time that's really happened that I remember, as far as other venues that I've been to or whatever. I don't know that I can think of it happening more frequently than like once a year. Like the Philly Met was exactly like a year apart, and that's kind of like an anniversary thing, so that's kind of cool. These shows, it's like, this is like Irish twins, you know? So yeah, dude, it blurs together. True. And the other thing is this is my first show where I was finally 21 years of age, and it was a place that served alcohol. So the 420 show at Rutgers was an outdoor venue at a university. You know, there was no alcohol to be had. But this was the first show that I was in there and could go and buy drinks. So that probably contributes a lot to my not remembering the two shows very well. When we kind of were going through our notes and like trying to figure things out. So, you know, it's been awesome to re-listen to the show. Shane, I don't know how you feel about it, but you know, it's sort of not remembering much about it and then sort of listening to it and realizing that this was a good show. Like, this was a good show. And I'm glad that I got to listen to the show a couple times and get re-familiar with it, because it was a good one. It was good.
It is a good show. I do sort of remember that, and that is kind of one of the things that like distinguishes, you know, the two shows in my memory, because I remember that you were 21. I was not 21 yet. I wouldn't turn 21 until that October. So yeah. I think I may have been the only one who was there with our like group who wasn't 21, and I think I even said at a couple of points like, hey, you guys are going to stay down here on the floor with me, right? Because I think the only bar in the Electric Factory is upstairs, or it was at the time anyway. I think you had to go upstairs to get to the bar. And it was like, oh yeah, like we'll stay down on the floor with you. Like, yeah, we're going to be down here for the majority of the time. And it was totally like not the case. I'm pretty sure it was me on the floor by myself for about 90% of the show.
Sorry,
like
dude.
it was like everybody. No, it's all good. But I do sort of remember that just being like, oh, everyone's off to the bar again. Like, guess I'm by myself again. So
Well, I think
I
the
do
line
kinda
was so
remember that.
long to get drinks that you just sort of had to get back in line as soon as you got a drink.
Right.
But anyway, so I believe we had 2 cars on this trip, and it was you and me and your brother Craig was in the
Yes.
one car. And the cool thing about that is the Craigster was at the Philly Met show that we just had an episode about in December. So it's kind of neat, an interesting coincidence that the last 2 episodes Craig was there too. So that was the one car, and the other one I believe was K-Dog, Will, and Mike. Now Mike wouldn't have been 21 either, I don't believe. So he must have hung out with you too. But yeah, all of the other people, I think we all were abandoned you. So I apologize.
No, it's all good.
But
It's all good.
But it was a good view of the stage and everything from like where the bar was. It was kind of cool. It was like so it's sort of like a rectangle, the Electric Factory, and as I remember it, this was like an elevated. It was like a second level. That was like the bar area for this show. I guess
Right.
it was. I don't remember if it was like a all ages show. So it must have been because people under 21 were there. So it must have been a distinction where you could only drink up in the drinking area. I don't remember if you could take drinks down into the downstairs. Do you remember that?
I don't think so. I think that's how they did it at the Electric Factory and the Trocadero, at least back in those days. Was basically
Yeah.
It was like if you were under 21, you just weren't allowed in the like upper area, and then the bar and all of the alcohol was on like the second level.
Yeah, as I recall. It's interesting because I've been to the Electric Factory more recently, and I seem to remember it differently. So I don't know if and maybe someone out there can help us out with that. I don't know if they changed the layout or something internally, but I just don't seem to remember it the same. Like these earlier Ween shows, we were like all about getting up close, The only exception is this one where I was like, going to the bar. But all the other ones, it was always all about being pretty close to the front. Like we were always like, get there early, get up front. So it's interesting how that shades my memory of the venue, because I don't remember much of the venue if I spend the entire time 10 feet away from the stage,
Right. Right.
So yeah, because more recently I believe I've been at the Electric Factory and there've been like upper level balconies where I guess there were bars there, but I wasn't drinking, so I guess I wasn't paying attention to that. It's interesting how depending if you're drinking or not, or what the scenario is, what you might notice or pay attention to or remember at the venue. So anyway,
Right.
as a sidebar.
Well, and also this was the first time that my brother Craig was to a Ween. This was his first Ween show. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool too. I think everyone else that was along with us had.
I don't
been to
think
at
Will
least-
had ever been to a Ween show. I think that was his first one.
That was probably Will's first Ween show, but that was kind of like a friend of a friend kind of thing. Like he was friends with
It's
K-Dog,
all
and
good.
but yeah, he was a cool guy, and we were happy to have him along with us and everything. But yeah, it was probably the first show for both of those guys. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, should we hit up the set list?
Yeah, man. I think we cut right to the chase here. That's what we're here for. So,
Shall I, or would you like to do the honors?
why don't you go ahead this time? I usually read it.
Okay.
Why don't you go for it?
All right. So they kicked it off with Ohio, Take Me Away, Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy, Even If You Don't, The Golden Eel, Sorry Charlie, The Mollusk, Voodoo Lady, Back to Basom, Bananas and Blow, El Camino, Roses Are Free, Little Birdie, Waving My Dick in the Wind, You Fucked Up, Dr. Rock, Awesome Sound, Piss Up a Rope, Booze Me Up and Get Me High, Baby Bitch, Birthday Boy, Pandy Fackler, Mr. Richard Smoker, Mr. Would You Please Help My Pony, Fat Lenny, Ocean Man, Tick, Stroker Ace, Buenos Tardes Amigo, and then for the encore, Ice Castles, Stallion Part 3, Buckingham Green, Homo Rainbow, and Hot for Teacher.
Yeah, dude. The first thing I want to say is I am always impressed when the set list just goes on and on and on. It's like Ween
That
just
is a
plays so
pretty
many
long
songs
set
in such a long show.
Yeah, especially back in those days.
Yeah, dude, the show clocks in around. Now they had an encore, and I want to give a shout out to the Stallion Mang because his YouTube channel is the one that I watched, and it's a nice brown recording. It's kind of like a lower quality video, and wasn't always easy to hear, but that always, I think, fits in well with Ween anyway. So shout out to Stallion Mang. And he's got his video clocked in at just 2 hours and 31 minutes and 50 seconds. And I believe that cuts out the short period of time between the regular set and the encore when they would have gone on stage, and then the fans would have just been chanting for a few minutes and they would have came back. So you got just over 2.5 hours, which again, man, back at that time, much more frequently shows were 2.5 hours or longer back then. And then more recently they Philly Met was 2.5 hours, but more recently shows have tended to be more like 2 hours and 15. So like definitely longer shows back then, and it shows, dude, when you read a set list that just keeps going and going.
Yeah, totally. Well, there's also, if you want to go back and listen to this one, there's also just a YouTube video, which is just the audio. The audio of this show is a little bit better. So like I had to go back to my CDs of this show, and I just put it on my iPod. So the audio is a little bit of a higher quality. So it's cool though. If you go on YouTube, you could see both. You could see the whole concert as a video, or you can just listen to the audio itself. So both of these, formats are available to listen to this show.
Totally. I find YouTube for me convenient because I can just throw it on my phone quick while I'm in the car.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it's so easy.
But man, whatever floats your boat, to each their own.
Yeah. The first thing about this show, I mean, I don't know if you want to just go to the rarities or...
Yeah, dude, let's just...
No matter how you slice it, I mean, Ohio,
Yeah, dude. To open with Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Ohio, this is the second time ever they had played that. So, like, and only 41 times total. Like, and to have that be the opener...
It's insane.
Like, that's an awesome song, first off. And I love a little CSN and Y, and a little CSNN, and any of the combinations thereof. But to have Ween cover that, I always feel like covers are like a window into the soul, right? And like it really reveal something about the band that's covering them. And so I think it says a lot, and it's awesome that Ween chooses to cover Ohio. So right off the bat, like the show comes right at you with something that's really rare, so that's awesome. And there are quite a few, rarities in this show. Sorry, Charlie comes up, and that's only been played 80 times.
Well, let me just chime in real quick about Ohio.
Yeah,
I do have to say, I'm gonna admit it here. Confession time. I did not know what that was at the time, and I think it kind of speaks to, first of all, the fact that I was young. We were just talking about that. We're 20 and 21, and also I think it speaks to, like, again, you're talking about a pre internet time, or at least like a pre streaming music time. So like I just wasn't as well versed in like classic rock as like I am now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like you just didn't have access to any fucking song you want to hear, and that's not something that like we would have just heard on like the radio, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I think my oldest brother was into Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. So, as I recall, I'm with you, dude. I don't think I really, connect,
I mean...
It was awesome playing it, but I didn't know exactly what it was. It wasn't, totally familiar to me either.
I know talking to Craig afterwards, who's 5 years older than me, and I think he barely even knew. He was like, I'm pretty sure it's Crosby, Stills, and Nash. That's all that he knew, about it. You know what I mean? But I think he just barely knew that song. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
I mean, it just totally comes out of left field. And after they're done playing it, you hear Diener say, "What the fuck was that?" And if you're watching the video of it on YouTube, there's another dude doing vocals. I'm pretty sure it's not on brown bass, but I'm pretty sure it's Chris Harford from the Chris Hartford and the Band of Changes, who's a big time Ween friend and part of the Ween family and everything. The Band of Changes, at least back in those days, was pretty much like all of Ween. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Dean Ween, Claude. So I'm pretty sure that's who that is. I'm not 100% sure because, like I said, it's not like confirmed on Brown bass. He doesn't play guitar or anything. He just does vocals with them.
Yeah, he just helps out.
So you'll see an extra dude standing there.
Yeah, dude. No, that was a good eye, man. And yeah, so if anyone can confirm that, dude, let us know, because that would be awesome. It's kind of like mystical. It's almost like, was that a ghost up there?
Who is that guy?
Yeah, dude. And it's funny. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and them. Don't Get Too Close to My Fantasy comes up. If we're looking chronologically, a couple songs later, and at the beginning, Diener's kind of going like, "Oh man, look at my life," and like,
yeah,
and it's kind of like, would they dare, throw like another Neil Young song down? but I think it was just fucking around. But
right.
But yeah, and then after, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so Sorry Charlie would be the next one that would sort of like jump out at me there. And that's early for a song like that.
Yeah, dude.
It's early in the evening for a song like Sorry Charlie.
Yeah, no, dude. It's like the 6th song played. And that was only the 11th time ever that Sorry Charlie was played. We had heard it at the Rutgers show, just a month earlier. So I think it might have been a little bit in rotation at the time. At least it was twice within 21 shows then. But that's definitely a rarity. And I love Sorry Charlie. That's such an awesome song. Like, it's just, how do you get any better than that? What a sad song. And like, it's like so heartfelt. If we're talking about rarities as we go through, El Camino. Holy shit. This is the only time I've ever heard El Camino. I don't know about you, dude. But this is the only time I've ever heard El Camino live.
I'm pretty sure it's the only time for me too. Yeah. I mean, and it's actually awesome. and it's really good too. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that rendition of El Camino.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely. And then another huge rarity, Little Birdie. Holy shit, dude! They play Little Birdie. 28 times total. So it's not like. That's the rarest song of the night. Yeah,
that's pretty rare. I mean, I think what happens when you're listening to it is, I think Claude has to go use the bathroom. So they're talking about like, which happens from time to time. So they're talking about, okay, what can we do without Claude? So before they start Little Birdie, though, Diener mentions So Long Jerry. So you hear him go, "Oh, so long Jerry. Well, I'll just do like one measure of it, and then we'll just cross that off the list." But just to have him mention So Long Jerry is like, damn, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Just to have him bring that up, that's pretty fucking cool.
No, that's a cool song. That was sad.
Yeah, that's just a great reference. And then Diener just busts out fucking Little Birdie. He's just like, "Oh, I'll just do Little Birdie," and just immediately just goes into it. And it's like, shit,
Yeah, dude. No, it's amazing. Some other songs that don't get played too often, not quite as rare, I guess, like A Birthday Boy. I always love Birthday Boy, and you don't hear that every day. And then Homo Rainbow from the South Park album is a great song. I love Homo Rainbow. And that was a little bit in rotation at that time, too, because that would have been just in that whole South Park era. But that's not too common. So Homo Rainbow was played, and Hot for Teacher. They end the show with Hot for Teacher, which is kind of an interesting way to end a show, in my opinion. But I always love to hear Claude, screeching out the falsetto and stuff. So that's awesome.
Totally.
And Shane, that occurs to me. This show is kind of notable, so it's always an interesting thing. Like, okay, it's a good show, and to be honest, if I'm being honest, most Ween shows are good shows, right? There's very few, very, very few that we're like, right? Like, they're all good. So it's always all about, like, trying to figure out what makes it notable, And so we're mentioning some of the rarities, right? But, like, another interesting thing, it's how many shows do you know of, Shane, where they played 2 covers?
That's pretty true.
Think about that, Ohio and Hot for Teacher, like, they bookend the show with covers. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty true. Yeah, man.
And then Awesome Sound is I think we both only ever heard Awesome Sound twice. Both times at the Electric Factory, 9 months apart, 8 months apart, whatever the hell, right?
You know, that's another crazy like fact. You know, when you're going back and looking at the shit on Brown Bass, it's like, is that true? But I mean, you know, yeah, it's like, I guess that's pretty fucking rare too, and that's why, you know, we've only heard it those 2 times.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, dude. And it's been played, it's according to Brown Bass 106 times total, which is pretty uncommon. And so that's crazy to think. Like, I don't know, is that something they played a lot more back then, I guess? So I guess maybe more recently they just haven't been playing it. So, you know, if we had been fans further back into the early 90s, maybe we had heard Awesome Sound more, I guess is what I'm thinking. But, right. You know, what will be, I suppose. So, you know, this show has a lot of, like, you know, pretty rare tunes. And, you know, dude, one of the things that occurs to me, you know, looking at this set list and thinking about how there's, like, El Camino and Sorry Charlie and Little Birdie on there and Awesome Sound. Like, because you don't have Quebec, because you don't have La Cucaracha, you know, like, we're just getting into the White Pepper era, right? So, like, there's just not as many songs to pull from, you know? And so, by default, that kind of means that there's more old school rarities that they're bringing out. And so this show totally is emblematic of that. So that's pretty cool, you know? And so you get a show that you get Little Birdie on one hand, but then you also get like Buckingham Green, which ends up being one of the most played Ween songs ever. But at this point, it's still pretty new, you know? So it's like you end up getting a wide variety of music on this show, which is pretty awesome when you think about it. You know, if we want to talk about some other highlights, you know, we can back up a little bit. The Voodoo Lady, Diener does some amazing talk box, dude.
Yeah, a.k.a. as we always put it, the tube. So Diener is fucking rocking out on the tube.
I don't know what that means, but it's all good.
Okay, well, it's a fucking tube. You know what I mean? It's like, you know.
Well, it is a tube,
and you can tell when they have it ready to go, and that, you know, when Diener is probably going to use it, because it's just a microphone standing by itself with a fucking tube on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, he's on the tube, you know?
And, you know, and we've said that before, and anyone who knows Ween obviously knows that he uses that. But I got to tell you, in particular, this show is really great talkbox solo, and like it's a really great version of Voodoo Lady. It's a song that's played a lot. So it's a song that's played a lot. But man, they really jammed it out back then, and this is a great rendition. So
yeah, it is.
That's a pretty good. When you're talking about the jams of the night, that was a good rendition. So that was definitely one of the big jams.
Yeah, there's no Prince in this one, but it's okay.
Yeah, no, you know, that's really rare and not something that happens very often at all. And so it's all good.
Right.
And this is also proof that you don't need it. You know, like Voodoo Lady can be special on its own. And so I think they pull it off well. You kind of still get the sense that, you know, it's still novel to them. You know, like, I know that this is 2000 and Chocolate and Cheese is 94, but it's the 5-piece band, you know, is still fresh. And we've talked about this before. Like, they're at the height of their powers in terms of, like, just they're having a great energy and a zest for the music, and, like, it all feels new still, I think.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. This is just like a funny thing that happens, but Back to Bassum has to be restarted. So it's kind of weird. I don't know if Diener just forgets like a line, but he does the first line, and then he just like, you know, they're playing music, but there's no vocals, and then he just says, let's try that again. And I don't know. It's like one of the things that sticks out in my memory, and I don't think that's ever happened on any of the other shows that I've been to. I can only remember that, like, you know, them actually just stopping and restarting a song from the beginning. That's the only time I could think of that happening.
Because you know, obviously from time to time, you know, Diener makes mistakes, but they usually just keep going.
Yeah, right.
And they weren't too far into the song, but they were far enough in that they could have just kept going. But but you know, this is Back to Bassum still would have been new enough because it's White Pepper that
that's true.
Maybe I know from my own experience, sometimes if you mess up a song, you kind of have to start over because you get out of the rhythm, and you kind of have to have that rhythm to have you like remember the song. If you're not like, you know, they haven't played it 500 times yet, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So I kind of ascribe it to that, you know.
Yeah,
and this is the I think you mentioned it. This is the tour finale. This is the last show of the tour, and that's a pretty cool thing to remember about the show. Like the fact that we got to go to the finale. You know, sometimes that can be a blessing. Sometimes that can be a curse. You know, like sometimes they rock it out extra hard because it is, and sometimes they're just exhausted because it is. And I kind of leaning more a little bit towards like the exhausted part on this one. You know, like not that it affected the show necessarily, like in any important way, but they play. If you look at the back of the shirt, dude, and you, I thought there was one somewhere, but you can see all the tour dates. And anyway, I think they only have like 1 or 2 days off. You know, they play like 20 consecutive days, 20 out of 22 days or some shit. So, you know, I can forgive Jeaner. In other words, I can forgive Jeaner, you know, this transgression, you know, after like playing that much for, you know, over and over and over again. If he's a little bit worn out and messes up the song, start over. You're fine.
Sure. Yeah, so basically what it really is it's the end of like the first leg of like the White Pepper tour. When you look at the back of the t-shirt that, you know, we had got, or I had gotten one anyway, this is like the last date on that shirt, but I think it's really basically just sort of like the northeast like section.
Yes, I mean, they take about 2 weeks off and then they start back up again.
Right, so like when you're looking at the whole year of 2000, like that whole spring and summer is just completely fucking loaded with dates.
Yeah, dude.
So it's the end of that like first leg of the tour, and it's like basically every night from the end of April to the end of May, there's a show, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like an insane year of them on tour. Really.
Totally. Dude, yeah. You know, there's definitely some years back then where, I mean, they were reaching that, like, you know, almost jam band status of, like, how many shows they were playing in a year. Right. You know? Right. Like, really, really touring heavy, which is awesome. Yeah. You know, and, like, and that's how you cut your chops, and that's, you know, and so they, you know, like the music benefited, you know, and so you definitely have, you know, just so many good shows back then. But anyway, other highlights of this, we got Buenos Aires Amigo, which, first off, I love the song. It's cool, and it's great because it's a, you know, like you talk about joke rock, and some people find there's humor in there. I think it's a really serious sort of like Latin, you know, Mexican ballad kind of thing, and so a notable thing for this song was that Diener's basically covered in like the Smoke Machine, like the entire like song practically. Like it's pretty heavy. So yeah, there's a good Smoke Machine going on at this show, I have to say, and definitely Buenos Aires.
Break out the smoke.
But there's a fantastic bridge. Diener, you know, rocks out the bridge. And then Aaron actually has a solo in Buenos Aires Amigo at this show, which we were just asking each other, like, I don't think that happens every single time they play Buenos Aires Amigo. But after Diener's bridge, Diener does a little, like, Spanish guitar that's really beautiful and, like, definitely memorable for me. And I don't know that I remember that he does that every show. Maybe he does. I don't know. But it's
Jeaner's
cool either
playing,
way.
Yeah, Jeaner's playing when he's on guitar, like when he's doing like a guitar solo. It's like, it's just there's something about it that's like a little like off in like an amazing way. You know what I mean? Like now, I mean,
he has
obviously
his own style.
he's not. He has his own style. He's obviously not as like skilled as Diener. You know what I mean? But like he has his own style, and it's just like fucked up enough to be like, wow, that was fucking awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just like something about it that's just like a slightly like askew. And you know, when he does his solo, especially around this like era, because you know he's fucking in it. You know he's sharp and like he's on point and everything. And it's just really cool to hear Aaron do a solo on guitar.
Yeah, at the height of his guitar chops. I mean, this, for me, his solo in this song is like one of the high points for him on the guitar, like in general.
Yeah, totally.
So that's pretty cool. You know, the Stallion Part 3 is awesome. That song's like a poem. You know, it's a poem, and I love that shit. You know, So that's great. We already mentioned Homo Rainbow. But I wanted to also mention, Diener has a really cool solo in that song. That just fits the song. The solo kind of just bounces up and down and just feels very, like, happy, and it kind of has this cool vibe, and it really goes along well with the song. So
Homo Rainbow
that was
is just
a cool
so
moment
good.
for me.
It's just Homo Rainbow is just so good. I mean, I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
sing along. It's a sing along, man.
Yeah, dude,
I
and
just
back
can't
then
help it.
that was like their pop song almost, right? Because you're talking about the South Park album, so a lot of people, would have heard that song, right?
That's a great example of a song where, the first like couple of times you hear it or you play it for like one of your buddies or whatever, it's like, oh, check out this crazy song, you know what I mean? Like, check out these goofballs or whatever. And then you listen to it 2, 3, 4 times and it's like, this song's fucking amazing.
Yeah, dude.
You know what I mean? That's
I
a
feel
great
like-
example, like that classic, like Ween, like ha ha ha, like, oh, those guys are nuts, blah blah blah, and then you listen to it a few times,
Well, and that's just exactly right, dude. It like transcends sort of the humor. Of course, the humor's there. I think humor's in life, and but the song is actually just like a really cool song about like
Yeah,
accepting other people and like letting people live the lives they want to live, and
And-
that's
and
really
just-
uplifting and cool. And it's funny because, I don't know that, it's funny how people can think it's a funny song, but I also don't know that I ever have heard Ween be almost political. Almost like I don't think there's any other song where they really almost like make some sort of like, sort of affirmation of some kind of like principle or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that
you
song
could put
kinda
it that
stands
way.
out.
Sure.
And I'm not saying they're doing that intentionally, like, oh, we're going to make a statement, but like it kind of comes out, through
Yeah,
the
you
fun.
could take it-
It's also a serious song and it has
Yeah.
a moral lesson.
Yeah, you could take it that way, of course.
Yeah, so I thought, it's cool. But yeah, dude, so the show has a lot of great, highlights and a lot of variety, which is what I like. You don't, obviously it's an older show, so you don't have, like I said, Quebec or La Cucaracha, which means the focus is inherently going to be older stuff. Most of the show is still coming from the mollusk, white pepper, and chocolate and cheese. It's always notable, of course, that even though Country Greats is one of the more recent albums, it's only got a couple songs. But there's a lot of songs coming from, I want to say, Godween Satan has a lot of shows of this. Let me see here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5
There's a
shows
lot
from
of-
Godween Satan. 5 songs from Godween Satan. So that's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
there's a lot of old school songs.
3
yeah.
Pure Guava, 3 from the Pod. Like, that's a pretty good mix of old stuff. So
Old school shit, yeah.
and so a good amount of brown. Like, this show's got a good amount of brown.
Let me just bring up a couple of the like the quotes and like banter in between songs and stuff. There's
Sure.
a weird moment you had mentioned the old man, when he references Neil Young again.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. There's a weird moment after the mollusk. I don't know if somebody's holding up a sign or somebody, there's people yelling for something, but you hear Jenner say, like, he's guessing, like, what he's hearing people say, and he says, "We small pigs," and then there's just, like a pause for a second, and then, "We smoke weed," and then, of course, when he says that, people just start cheering.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, what, There's another moment, I didn't get a chance to bring this up to you, Rory, but there's another moment where I don't know if somebody had lost their wallet or somebody had thrown a wallet up on stage, but they're talking about like, oh, like we got this wallet and, dude, we got your wallet. And you're never going to get it back, dude, or something. And it's like, it's weird. Like, whose fucking wallet are they talking about? And like,
Sorry, dude. That's sad.
Yeah,
Too
sorry.
bad.
But they make it sound like the guy got it back. Like the guy, oh yeah, that's mine. Okay. Or it's just like this weird, like, hey man, I got your wallet. That's to me like sort of like, you can tell it's still like a smaller show. You know what I mean? When there's those
Yeah.
little moments like that, like there wouldn't be something like that would happen in like, a show like at the Met or something, or
well, the
it would be
Electric
very
Factory is
unlikely.
kind of a smaller venue. I mean, it's not like too
Yeah.
small by any means. But,
Yeah,
but it's
right,
not smaller.
right.
It's not too big. It's medium to small.
Right. So that's kind of like a punk rock moment.
Totally.
You can hear after Little Birdie, Diener makes this quote where he just says, I was going to say something about the Flyers, but there's nothing to say. So, not to go too far off topic here, I'm not a big sports guy, but my brother, who we mentioned was along with us, and this was his first show, is a huge Philadelphia Flyers fan. Okay? So, him and I have quoted that quote for the last 20 years, on and off for the last 20 years. Okay?
It's amazing what sticks with you, you know? Like, we were just talking about how this shows like blurs in our memory, and yet you have like a quote that you've been using from the show for like 20 years.
So again, I'm not a big sports guy, but just real quick. So I'm pretty sure they were in the playoffs with the Devils, and I think they had gotten to seriously like Game 7. Okay. And from my recollection, because I do sort of remember watching this game with some of our friends who are like big into sports and big into hockey, Lindros had come back for like, this was like the only game that he could like come back into because he was hurt like that whole season, or like almost that whole season. Came back into this Game 7, got hurt again like 10 minutes into the game, and they wound up losing. That is my... If there's a huge
you have a great
Flyers
recollection
nut
of that for not being a sports guy, you know.
If there's a huge Flyers nut out there who's listening to this and I'm wrong, please correct me. But I'm pretty sure that's what he's talking about. It was just like the biggest like epic loss, you know, of like Flyers history, and that's what he's That's what he's referencing. I'm pretty sure anyway. So
dude, I have no idea. I have no idea. I do not follow.
I
hockey,
know. I'm not a big hockey guy. But like I said, my brother is, and he, you know, if he's talking about the Flyers with me for whatever reason, he's probably going to bring up that quote.
That's awesome.
It's that kind of thing. So what that quote is from. So
that was Diener, that was Diener, right?
That was Diener, yeah. That's all he says
thanks,
about
Diener,
it.
for providing sort of a quote that's just part of your like.
Yeah.
You know, linguistic, you know, heritage, you know?
That's amazing. It's true, man.
Dude, another something that I was thinking about for this show, you know, like we had just watched the Philly Met show, and I think one of the things I said, you know, at the Philly Met was no one really had a chance to shine except for Diener in terms of like solos and whatnot. There weren't a lot of other moments.
True.
So the one thing I noticed at this show is Glenn has a lot of fun on the keys, and they have a lot of songs that are his like songs to play with. Like I list some of them, like Bananas and Blow, Panty Fackler, Mr. Richard Smoker, and Ice Castles are all songs that really have a heavy Glenn presence, you know. And like I just always am gonna gush over Glenn on the. If you're listening, Glenn, you're awesome. And,
Glenn's the man.
And so I always love listening to him play the keys. And so that was an interesting contrast, you know. And I had to think about that as we listened to more of the older shows, to think like, was that every show back then? Like, was that the Glenn era? You know,
right?
And, you know, so it's interesting. And there were other songs too that at the top of my head I'm like can't think of which ones they were during the show, but definitely a lot of like good Glenn. You know.
Yeah.
So that was another cool thing worth mentioning. I don't remember hearing a lot of Dave solos on the bass. And do you remember much Claude?
No, I mean, you got Claude on Hot for Teacher at the end, but I guess it's not really...
Sure, but I guess I was meaning more like drum solos.
It's kind of hard when there isn't something like LMLYP where like everyone gets a solo.
Or Can't Put My Finger on It. Can't Put My Finger on It's another one that like that Claude has a huge role of solos and like does a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah, or like Never Squeal on the Pusher is big Claude, like, you know, big drum, breakdown. But yeah,
Waving
it's
My
kind of
Dick
hard
in the
when
Wind, right? That's this show. Is that in this show? That's a Claude moment. Jimmy Wilson.
Was that in there?
Yeah.
Well, and also one of the things I notice is when they do El Camino, Junior's doing the and then you hear Claude go Santo Domingo. So that's really cool. It's like, you know, Claude's got to get in there. Yeah,
I think my Brown video audio just didn't pick that part up. A little bit too brown to get the fine details.
You know, Claude's got to sneak in some vocals whenever he can.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I mean, Glenn is the fucking man, and it's awesome to hear, you know, like Pandy Fackler from like this era when it's really starting to like, you know, fire up.
Yeah, it's interesting because the songs they're not always as clean as they are now because they're still working through them, and so it's just interesting, you know, because in some ways, you know, we talk about we're like a broken record, like, oh, they were at the height of their powers, blah, blah, blah. Like, I have to tell you that instrumentally, the songs during the reunion tours nowadays are kind of like more complete, but like back then, they are maybe a little more rough around the edges, and they play around a little bit more with them as they're like figuring them out, you know? And so that's just cool because, you know, it's not like, you know, listening to the Philly Met show, like every song has like this beautiful Diener solo, you know, like Diener bridge,
Right.
you know, and like that's not true back then as much. Like, you know, a little more rough around the edges, you know, feeling stuff out. And that's awesome. And that means, I think, that the songs like evolve over time as they're played. And I think that means that it's not necessarily the same song twice. You know, Voodoo Lady, we listened to, that was at the 420 show, and that was at this show, just over a month apart. But two completely different versions of the song, you know?
If I have to be honest, and I guess I'm sort of getting to like, you know, the like wrap up stage here. If I'm being, you know, completely honest, I mean, there are definitely some good highlights of this show. And again, you know, like you said, there isn't, I've said this before, there isn't a such thing as a bad Ween show. I'm not saying it's a bad show. It's definitely worthwhile going back and listening to. But for me, when I go back and think about it, you know, like we said, the two shows at the Electric Factory sort of like blend together. Okay, so that's sort of like,
it's true.
that's sort of like the first thing about it. You had taken the trouble to actually figure out how many songs they played that are the same for both of those shows. So there are 21 songs that they played for both of those shows in 99 at the Electric Factory and 2000 in the Electric Factory.
That seems like a lot.
Okay. That seems like a lot. And like I'm just sort of looking at the 99 set list, and really like one of the only main like differences about it is like the end of the first set of the 99 show, they played LMLYP. Like, you still have Buenos Tardes at the end. You still have Hot for Teacher at the end. You know, like, yeah, there are some great highlights for the 2000 show, like El Camino and Little Birdie and Ohio. But, like, really, like, those two shows are really similar.
Yeah, dude, you're right. I think they don't distinguish themselves very well outside of the highlights. Outside of those, like, handful of rarities.
We're really like dorking out. I mean, I don't expect, you know, fucking Diener, you know, I mean, I know that he does the set list now. I'm assuming that he did back in those days as well, but like, I'm not saying that like, oh, well, you should have sat down and figured that out. Oh, what did we play last time we played the Electric Factory? Let's do a completely different show. I'm not saying that like they should have done that or anything like that.
And that's what I'm wondering, like,
but
just accidental then? Like, I don't think it would have happened on purpose.
It's just, I think it's just a typical show for like that time period for that type of venue.
Yeah.
So like that kind of brings up my other point, which is the show that we had seen before this was the 420 show. And it's like, that show is just so like monumental in like its set list. And there's just so much fucking like insane shit that it's like when you go from this and then basically here we are like a month later and we're seeing the Electric Factory show, it's like, you know, that just sets the bar way too high. You know what I mean? You know, it's like this show kind of like brought us back down to earth a little bit. It's like, not that it's not a great show, but like you can't top fucking 420.
That was a great show, for sure.
I mean, when you look
check
at
out our old podcast if you haven't. But the
I mean, check out our two-parter.
April 20th, 2000 show, two-part episode. Check it out. It's an amazing show. It's like if you're going to give anyone a live show of Ween, that would be it. You know, it's interesting. And even we talked about how the 2000 show for the Electric Factory, it's like, yeah, the highlights are great, but then after that, it kind of just blurs in with that 99 show. You know, and I'm looking, and it's also true that some of the highlights are like the same highlights. You know?
Right.
Like Buenos Stars Amigo, but Awesome
Right.
Sound. You know, like those are two great highlights. Homo Rainbow, but they're Hot for Teacher. But they're at both
Yeah.
shows. You know, Booze Me Up
Right.
and Get Me High. That's kind of a crazy
Yeah.
song. And,
Yeah.
and but they're at both shows.
But it's played at both of those shows.
So
Right.
it's just kind of crazy. Like, what a coincidence. It's just weird. So, I guess
So,
at
yeah,
the end of
that's-
the day, when we say it blurs, I guess that's why.
Yeah,
take
I
that
mean,
for what it's
it's-
worth, I suppose.
Right. I mean, it's tough because it just, it's hard to distinguish. I mean, now it's been, like a month since, we saw the Philly Met show, and even already some of those two shows are starting to like blend together in my memory. Other than, where
Yeah.
I was like seated. You know what I mean? So it's just natural, I think, for that to happen at the same like venue. And when time goes by and you're just thinking back to it. But like when you go back and you really geek out like we are, and you look at the set list for both of those shows, I mean they are like really, really similar.
Yeah.
So it's like, not to be too critical, but it's like, they're pretty much the same show.
It's almost like you could just take the two shows and say, hey, it's Electric Factory from that era. Because that's the only two times that I think that they ever played the Electric Factory, actually. Because they
That's
go
true.
from the Troc, and that was a tiny venue, a small venue, and then they do the Electric Factory a few times. And after that, that's when they start doing like the Penn's Landing, the larger outdoor
like
sort of amphitheater things in Philly.
Yeah, like the Penn's Landing shows and stuff. Yeah, it's true.
So this is like, if you want to talk about the Electric Factory, you could make a little like disc and say it's Electric Factory Ween, and just take the best of from those two shows, and it would almost be like you got the Chicago Live. It's like you wouldn't even know
Right.
which show they came from.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's kind of interesting. But you know what, dude?
Yeah.
Still a good show, and
Yeah.
like I just said, the Electric Factory, right? So they only played there twice, and hey, I guess 21 songs got to get played twice at the Electric Factory. Hey.
It would just be too perfect if it was exactly 20 songs.
Oh my
that
god.
were-
Oh my god. We should have lied and just said it was 20. That's hilarious. I totally didn't catch that one. Well, everybody, 20th anniversary, 20 episode, 2020, 20th show, all that, 20 shirt, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
20 years
20
old.
shows. 20 shows on that first leg of that tour. It's been 20 years, and it's the 20th episode, and it's the year 2020. Am I missing anything?
I think that's all of them, dude. But that's just hilarious. That's just ridiculous. But yeah, dude. I think. Do you have anything else you want to add about the show? I think.
No,
I think
I was
we
just
covered
gonna
it,
say
man. I
it's-
think a good show, good length.
Yeah.
Good length.
Good length
some good
show.
highlights, but a little bit of the sign of the times. A little bit of the, that's what you're getting at that time period, and it was still good, and I don't think at that time during that era, you couldn't lose going to a Ween show.
No,
If some of them were a little similar.
I definitely, like I said, I would still recommend you go back and listen to this show. There's no doubt about that. You know what I mean? It's still a great show, especially for that time period. No question.
Totally.
So, yeah, we're excited to sort of go back, and it's been a lot of fun just doing this one and doing, re-listening to it and everything. And we're, I'm excited to go back and listen to some more stuff from that era.
Yeah, dude. It's funny. The 420 show was the last one that we discussed from the history, and all the episodes since then were new shows that we've gone to the last couple years, the last year and a half, and or the interview shows that we've done, and so it's just crazy how you sort of start to do a few different things, and next thing you know, it's been a long time since we've done one of those old shows, and I love it because it is fun, like going through, and so I'm looking forward to that as well, because each one we can kind of think about, like, okay, is this one similar? Like, starting to think about watching those patterns and seeing how many of these shows are kind of similar. Like, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and all the,
So
you
it was
know,
still a good show, and we still recommend that you go back and listen to it. So we hope that you'll stick with us, this year. And we're looking forward to going back and doing some more of our Ween history, which is what we love doing. And again, hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/Weencast podcast. Hit us up on Twitter, again, at Weencast podcast, or just write us an email, weencastpodcast@gmail.com. Facebook.
Yes.
All of the podcast platforms. So recommend us to anyone that you know is a Ween fan or just a music fan in general. And that's about all I got.
Yeah, dude, and I would just say that we do have a couple surprises up our sleeve coming up. We'll say more about that later. But yeah, we got some special edition episodes coming up. I'll just leave it at that. To tantalize your taste buds.
Don't forget about our stickers. We have stickers. I forgot to bring them up at the beginning of the show. But if you want a sticker, hit us up on Patreon. We'll get one or two right out to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, dude, we love handing out stickers. So thanks, everyone, for listening. It's been real. Keep checking us out. We really appreciate it. We love hearing from you guys. It's awesome. Peace be with you.
Yeah, peace, everybody.
All right,
We out.
late.
Hi, I'm Leah.
And I'm Beth Ann.
And we're She Will Rock You.
She Will Rock You is a bi-weekly podcast about rock history.
Each episode, we talk about an artist and their lives, but we do it a little differently.
You see, we noticed there was a lack of ladies hosting music podcasts,
So we wanted to fix it.
and here we are, two badass millennial ladies talking about rock music our parents wouldn't let us listen to.
As a bonus, you'll even get our beer recommendations at the end.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts.
And remember, don't do drugs!
What's up, people? My name is Sean, and I'm the host of You're Not Listening, a podcast where we teach you how to actively listen to music one song at a time. Every episode, I sit down with my father, who was a mobile DJ for over 35 years, and we each bring a song to the table and talk about what makes it great, why you should listen to it, and why you should appreciate it through detailed analysis of the words and music, some personal stories that we might have with that, and hopefully will help you change your mind and get you listening to music in a little bit different way so you get a little bit more out of it. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. If you love music and you want to figure out how you can love it even more, maybe even learn how to appreciate a song that you think you hate, it's You're Not Listening, a music podcast. Check it out. Thanks, everyone.